Could you walk me through some common tactics and ways that they would recruit someone like that?
Yeah,
Where are they meeting them? How are they meeting them?
Sure. This is an easy recruitment that any, brand new case officer can do. It's essentially a cold pitch, but you're cold pitching someone who's so desperate that they'll do anything.
Mm.
There's no love of Iran among these Afghans because the Iranians haven't given them anything. There's no hatred of Israel because maybe these guys don't even know it's the Israelis that are asking them to work. They could be saying, oh, we're from the Mujahideen Khalq, MEK, or we're from Iraq, or we're from, Pakistan or whatever. They don't have to say we're Israeli intelligence officers.
Might some of these spies who are Israeli intelligence officers, to be clear, not be native Israelis?
Oh, I would suspect that almost none of them are native Israelis.
Meaning they're not undercover trying to pose like Eli Cohen did as another
Correct.
race. Okay.
Correct. These are probably Iranians who have been recruited by the Israelis overseas, or what would be even better for the Israelis is if they are Iranian Jews who maybe emigrated and can be sent back.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so they would get a lot of these guys easy approaches, like the street type taskers, easy approaches because they got nothing going for them.
And then what they end up getting is, jobs in these generals' houses as a tea wala, a tea boy, or
that could mean a few things.
Sweep the floor, and oftentimes it does mean a few things. Sweep the floors, wash the car, whatever. Then you get the general's cell phone number.
Mm.
Well, we know that the Israelis targeted each individual's cell phone number so they could track it as it's moving around town and fire rockets directly at whoever happens to be holding the cell phone. So the Iranian government then said, as a new policy, no generals and no nuclear scientists can carry cell phones. So you know what the Israelis did? Because the Israelis ended up killing them all.
What'd they do?
They realized that the Iranians never told the bodyguards that they can't carry cell phones.
Somewhere Mike Yeagley's just hitting the table right now. God damn it.
I will say the one thing that I was really, really worried would lead to something terrible was when we decided to bomb Iran at the Israelis' behest.
Yeah. Now, why would we do that, John?
Well, there's a good reason why we would do it. Before it was done, I would have thought it was insanity.
Mm-hmm.
After it's been done, I think I've come to the conclusion that, all right, that wasn't so bad after all.
Really?
So, yeah. Listen, every president, from when I joined the CIA, George H.W. Bush had just become president, the Israelis asked us to bomb Iran. Every single president. No matter who the prime minister of Israel happens to be, you got to bomb Iran. You got to bomb Iran. You got to bomb Iran. And every single president said, no, we're not bombing Iran. I remember a couple of times when Obama, was it Obama? Obama and Netanyahu got into shouting matches.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That we didn't have an understanding or an appreciation of what an existential threat Iran was or a nuclear Iran was. You got to bomb Iran. You got to bomb Iran. We would never bomb Iran because our position was that would be the start of World War III. Because if we bomb Iran and maybe, weakened the hold that the government has on the country, then the Chinese may have to come in or the Russians may have to come in.
That was going to be my next question. Did this just prove that this situation, seeing as we did bomb sites there and nothing happened, did this prove that the Chinese and the Russians actually don't really give a shit about Iran, or is that a little premature to say?
Maybe just a little premature, but I would say as things stand right now, yeah, that's the initial conclusion we can draw. The reason, though, I'm told, that Donald Trump decided to bomb Iran was that the Israelis said for the first time, if you don't bomb Iran to take out these deep bunkers, we're going to use nuclear weapons. And they had never threatened that before. And so Trump said, bombing Iran might actually save us from the start of World War III if it keeps the Israelis from using nuclear weapons.
So according to your source, the Israelis told the President of the United States that if he did not use the United States military power to bomb the nuclear facilities in Iran, Israel, acting on its own, would use nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Do you see why there's a problem with that statement, John?
Yeah.
Because they've never admitted that they've had them.
That's right.
So you're telling me that they just admitted to the president of the United States that they have nuclear weapons and we still do not have them in the IAEA treaty?
I mean, if Israeli nuclear whistleblowers are to be believed, yeah, they've had them. They started working on them in the 50s. They got them around the late 60s or the early 70s. Look at Mordechai Vanunu. Mm-hmm. He wasn't charged for treason for nothing.
That's the guy who they hid in Rome with the honeypot?
Yeah.
Yeah, 86?
No, he friended me on Facebook. I rejected the friend request.
That's not what I asked, but okay.
I know. No, you said was he 86? No, he's alive.
No. Not 86. I think they got him in 1986.
Oh, in 86. Yeah, they got him in 86.
That's right. He friend requested you on Facebook?
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, no, thank you. I have enough problems in my life. Yeah. Anyway, I was on Piers Morgan's show a couple of months ago, and I'm on with a retired Mossad general, Danny Ayalon. Thank you. So Alan Dershowitz was on.
Oh, God.
And I just can't help myself sometimes when Alan Dershowitz and I are in the same room. I just can't help it. He's just such... On the one hand, he's a very kind and generous man. On the other hand, when it comes to Israel, he's irrational.
How so?
There's literally nothing that the Israelis can do that's wrong. Nothing. And he won't let you get a word out. If he thinks that you might possibly criticize Israel, he's going to interrupt you until you just give up and move on. So I'm arguing with him about whether or not Israel spies on the United States. I said, of course they spy on the United States. They're prolific in their espionage work in the United States, especially as it relates to American defense contractors, right? And Piers finally interrupts Dershowitz and asks General Ayalon if it's true that the Israelis spy on the United States. And he just laughed. He goes like that. And he says, my position is whatever the prime minister's position is. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you for confirming that Israel spies on the United States. It's the same thing with the nuclear program. Piers came right out and asked him, does Israel have nuclear weapons?
And what did he say?
And he said, well, the prime minister hasn't confirmed that there are nuclear weapons, so I'm just going to go with what the prime minister says.
But breaking news, you just reported here today based on your source that not only has the prime minister confirmed it, he confirmed it to the president of our country.
One other thing, too. I have a friend. He was my first boss at the CIA. He's a really, really great guy. He retired years ago.
John Brennan?
No, he's not a really great guy. No.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah. So in his retirement, he writes books about these little niche foreign policy issues that you might say, well, who gives a shit about that? And then you read the book and you can't put it down. Like U.S.-Indian relations during the Kennedy administration. I couldn't put the book down. Or some obscure little window in the 70s of U.S.-Saudi relations, stuff like that. So anyway, he told me that, like we all do, he sent his book into the CIA's Publications Review Board for clearance before he sent it to the publisher. And he said that in all the books he's written at least a half a dozen, they only took out 3 words: Israeli nuclear program. And I said, why? It's not up to us to protect the fact that there's an Israeli nuclear program. We didn't classify any Israeli nuclear program. That was improperly classified. And he said, yeah, I knew it, but then I thought, it's easier just to take it out.
I don't have any problem. I mean, if it were up to me, nobody in the world would have nukes. But seeing as that's not the case, I don't have any problem with them having nukes. I have a problem with the fact that every country around the world who even might have nukes has to admit to it and register, and they don't.
And sign the non-proliferation treaty afterwards.
Yeah, and it's like, it's insulting to hear that. Oh, and you see the same reaction that you just described over and over again. Anytime a spokesperson of Israel is being asked about it, I mean, they sweat like a whore in church when you ask them about nuclear weapons. They all know.
Yeah.
But they're like, yeah, no, we don't have them. It's like, but
they all are compelled to play this silly game. Yeah.
It's like, what?
Exactly.
But it's been almost 60 years.
And there are credible reports that when the apartheid regime fell in South Africa, they had nukes and they gave them to the Israelis. Like, why aren't we talking about that?
They gave them?
Uh-huh.
I don't know anything about this.
Yeah.
Who reported that?
Can we Google that? Oh, that's been around for decades. South African nuclear program, Israel, something like that.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there was a period in the 70s when Argentina and Brazil were going at it, and they were both starting to develop nukes, and then they both backed off. Can you imagine?
God damn. All right, Deep's got it. So Israel and South Africa had a secret defense and nuclear cooperation, particularly after the 1975 Israel-South Africa agreement. While Israel reportedly provided South Africa with technology, knowledge, and equipment to help with its armaments needs, there is no conclusive evidence of significant assistance in developing South Africa's nuclear devices. However, documents from 2010 suggest Israel offered to sell nuclear warheads to Africa. And then there's like a lot below here, or to South Africa. There's a lot below here. So this is like... This is going far.
The Vela incident, a 1979 satellite detected a double flash of light, which is why they believe to have been a nuclear explosion.
A joint South African-Israeli test. So at the least, what it would appear is that there was some cooperation on development, or at least working with the materials, which also would signify that you have them. I mean,
and remember at the time, the regime in South Africa was staunchly pro-Israel, especially in the United Nations. It was one of the few countries that Israel could routinely count on.
That's interesting. So back then, in the 70s and 80s, you're saying. Hey guys, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge help. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of the show. Yeah, this whole peace deal that just went down, which is tenuous.
Yeah, it's not a peace deal.
It's not a peace deal.
No,
what do you say?
It's just a ceasefire. It doesn't address a single one of the core issues. Not a single one. You know, stop shooting is not a peace deal. Yeah.
Do you see? Like, I am rooting for it. I'm rooting for. So, and obviously there's been some now, like they're fighting over what dead bodies look like when they got like fucking exchanged and all that. And there's been some funny business going on both sides. But like I said, I'm rooting for a ceasefire to continue.
Me too.
And I will commend, even if I don't like the leadership of both sides, which I don't, I will commend the people for at least trying to do that.
See, that's exactly my position.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you have faith that something like this could be sustainable though?
Not with the current Israeli government in place. No, it's the most extreme right-wing government in the history of Israel, to the point where the Minister of Finance, who oddly... Smotrich, oddly also has jurisdiction over the West Bank, and Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Minister of, what's his title now? National Security, I guess it is. They both have felony convictions for anti-Muslim hate crimes. Felony convictions for hate crimes, not for, failing to fill out an internet form or something like that, like we have here. And they're in charge of the Palestinians. As long as those guys are in place, there's no possible way that there can be a lasting peace. And listen, the bottom line too is there's going to have to be an independent Palestine. There just has to be, because the current situation is untenable. Yeah. The Israeli press has been talking a lot over the last several weeks, maybe over the last month, about an idea where Israel would technically continue to own Gaza, but the day-to-day life of Gaza would be administered by Saudi Arabia, which would also then invest in things like an electrical grid, water desalination plants, a port. Yeah. And it would have to be disarmed. There would have to be no Palestinian military. Great, right? It's a great idea. And I've said it a couple of times in podcasts. In 1991, I was on my very first overseas tour in Saudi Arabia, brand new CIA officer. And I was working for an ambassador who really became legendary, Chas Freeman. He went on to be ambassador to China and assistant secretary of defense. The guy is brilliant. He floated the idea with the Saudis. What if we were to ask you to build a port and an airport and a water desalination plant and an electrical grid? And they said, yeah, we would do it in Gaza. And then we went to the Israelis, and the Israelis said, absolutely never. That was 1991. Mm. And before October 7th, they only had but 5 hours of water every day. Then the Israelis would shut it off. They would have a few hours of electricity. Then the Israelis would shut it off. The situation's untenable because another October 7th is going to happen if there's not a sort of a pressure release valve, you know? What was it Martin Luther King said? Never underestimate a man's desire to be free.
Yeah.
Well, they've got to concede something.
I've actually never thought about not what you just said, but like an idea I'm getting from that. And I'm just thinking about this live and out loud. So this might be the dumbest thing I've ever said, or it could be like something that's worth kicking around. What obviously Palestinians and Saudi Arabians are different.
Sure.
They're different groups of people.
Yeah.
But they're both a part of the Arab population, if you will.
Correct.
What if like a two-state solution involved Palestine becoming a part of Saudi Arabia?
Off the top of my head, my guess is the Saudis would find that workable, and the Israelis wouldn't.
The Saudis and Israelis are starting to get somewhat along now.
Yes, but we should also not underestimate the Israelis' desire for a biblical greater Israel.
Yes.
And to give away land is not in the Israeli playbook.
And that's the problem here, because like you saw the day after the ceasefire, Hamas started executing people in the streets because they're a terrorist group, and that's what they do. They're evil, and they're going to do stuff like that. They exist because there's a vacuum in a place that's not allowed to have a military, not allowed to have a state-run government, not allowed to economically vie for itself. It's locked basically on all four borders. We've gone through that ad nauseum before, you and I on podcasts. What do you expect there to be?
Exactly. Exactly right. And it's even more complicated than that. In 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait, right? We put together one of the greatest, albeit temporary, military alliances since the Second World War. And we went to the Palestinians and said, you better be on the right side of this thing, right? We also said the same thing. At the time, the United Nations Security Council happened to include Cuba and Yemen as two of the states. So we weren't sure what they were going to do, which way they were going to vote. It didn't matter because they didn't have veto power anyway. But we wanted as united an international front as we could come up with. And we went to the Palestinians all the way to the top, to Yasser Arafat, and said, you better be on the right side of this. And they jumped in with Saddam Hussein. The thing is half the population of Kuwait was Palestinian. And Bahrain and Qatar and the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. Well, Saudi Arabia was half the population was Yemeni. And so when Arafat took a position, first, Saudi Arabia expelled literally every Yemeni. I flew into Yemen as that was happening in very early, it was like February or March of 1991. I flew from Jeddah, and as you're coming into Sana'a, I mean, for 15 minutes before you get to the airport, all you could see were people living in cardboard boxes or tin lean-tos and shanties. They had expelled half the population of Yemen back into Yemen, where there was no food and no water, no work in the first place. I was in Kuwait, I've mentioned before, on Liberation Day. We went in with the Marines. And a senior Kuwaiti prince told me, and I reported it at the embassy team meeting, the ambassador, I still remember the ambassador just shaking his head like, oh my God. The senior Kuwaiti prince told me, in a year, there will be no Palestinians in Kuwait. None.
What was his reasoning?
They had sided with the Iraqis. They were all traitors and they had to pay for it. So the problem with that is the Palestinians are the middle class of the Middle East. They're the professors, the doctors, the lawyers, the engineers, the public school teachers. They're the ones that make the economy run. You want Palestinians. They're all educated. You want them in your country until their leadership turns on you. And so they started replacing them with Filipinos and Thais and Pakistanis, lots of Egyptians, because the Egyptians are well educated too. So you have lots of Egyptian engineers. All the pilots at Gulf Air, for example, Kuwait Airways, were all Egyptians after that. And the Palestinians were left out on their ears. Where do you go? You can't go back to your country because you have no country. So what do? It was the stupidest decision that Yasser Arafat ever made in his life. Like, this was an easy win, That's what I'm saying. These are the types of leaders that they've had over the last 75 plus years who are these upstart black hand organizations, not run by the best people at all, And like, that's the thing. Like, when the Israelis will say like, oh, Yasser Arafat was a terrorist, you could disagree with them. They have a case there. Sure. And so was Menachem Begin. Yeah. And you can move on from that and win the Nobel Peace Prize for what that's worth. I'm sorry. Two other issues that make this more complicated. Egypt. Okay. The Palestinians desperately want the Rafah border crossing open. Okay. The Egyptians are not going to open the Rafah border crossing. They're just not. Why? Because it'll result in a flood of Palestinians leaving Gaza and entering Egypt. And the Egyptians can barely feed their own people or provide work for their own people. They're like 120 million Egyptians. And they're going to have to worry about another 2 million Palestinians and feed and clothe and employ them? They can't do it. Right. They just can't do it. The other one is Jordan. Most people now are too young to remember that in 1968, the Jordanian military was literally fighting the Palestinians on the steps of the palace as Black September, the Palestinian group, was trying to murder King Hussein and his family and take over Jordan and make it Palestine. Yep. Well, they have long memories in Jordan. Yeah, half the population is Palestinian because they're the children, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren of 1948 refugees. So is half the royal couple. And so is half the royal couple. Absolutely true. But the thing is, they'll never be fully Jordanian. In fact, Jordanians carry a green passport, and if you're Palestinian born in Jordan, you carry a black passport. So you don't even get first-class rights. So it's very complicated. Like, people say the right things. Governments in the Middle East say the right things about Palestinians. But when it comes time to put their money where their mouths are, not a whole lot gets done. So putting Jordan aside for a second, because there's another layer there that maybe we can come back to that you and I have talked about before. One argument that the Israelis have made over the years that I think really does have some weight to it is that a lot of the Middle East and the Arab countries don't really give a shit about the Palestinians. They're just a useful, tool of propaganda. That's right. To be able to say, oh, look what the Israelis are doing, but they don't really care about the people. And I would argue, even today, even after the last 2 years and what we've seen, in some cases, I think they're right about that. I think so too. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Abraham Accords have been so popular and so well received around the Middle East. Just in the last week, Kazakhstan, of all places, joined the Abraham Accords to include Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Tunisia, Morocco, Sudan, I may be missing one or two. And the crown jewel is going to be Saudi Arabia. And I think eventually Saudi Arabia joins as well. Because the bottom line is it'll be good for the Saudi economy. And they don't really care about the Palestinians so terribly much.
There's been, obviously, MBS is where it starts and ends with the book in Saudi Arabia, 100%. For sure. But there's been some mixed messaging from the extended royal family when they talk publicly about Israel-Palestine. There's some who are clearly supporting Israel and others who are like, no, we need to figure out Gaza here. What they're doing to the Palestinians is wrong. Remember
that the king's title is not just king, Malik. It is king and custodian of the two holy mosques. So he has to have pristine Islamic credentials as well. None of them do. I mean, King Fahd took it on the chin for, coming here when Reagan was president, and, there were pictures from the Associated Press of him toasting Reagan with a glass of wine. You're not supposed to drink wine. Oh, they were ready to overthrow the government. They were so upset. But MBS is a unique case. He's not afraid to kill people who he thinks are going to stand in his way, including people named Al Saud. I'll tell you, Julian, I went to Saudi Arabia in 2021 or 2. I went to cover Biden's trip there.
Oh, you were covering it?
Yeah. I was there in 2022, I think. It was the summer of 2022. And I hadn't been back to Saudi Arabia since like 1996, right? So it had been a long time since I had been in Saudi Arabia. And I didn't recognize the place. Women driving. I was like, oh my God. Windows down, music blasting, their movie theaters. I'm like, what happened? And here I've been yelling about the Saudis being, from the Stone Age. And it's just not true under MBS. His murderous, Jekyll and Hyde.
Little murder for a little culture.
Aside,
it's a good trade.
Yeah. When he said he was going to bring Saudi Arabia into the 21st century. He meant it.
He did.
And it happened quickly. I remember bowling. When I was living there in 91, I went bowling at the Hilton, right? It was a group of us from the embassy. There was a 2-lane bowling alley on the roof of the Hilton. And they had to put a big curtain in between us. It was a curtain that was hanging from the ceiling. So the men bowled on one side and the women bowled on the other side. And we could hear each other, but we were forbidden from seeing each other.
Like your own women.
Yeah, from the embassy. Because, if men and women bowl together, the next thing you know, they're going to be having sex in the bowling lane.
Wouldn't want that.
Of course.
Wouldn't want that. So I say, hey, look, they're moving up to the modern day.
Yeah, now it's like, they're blasting Tupac from the car and women driving, they're hanging out of the window. Woo! It's like, I remember standing at the window of my hotel like I was in the Twilight Zone.
So they get to relive the 90s too while they're getting their pop culture?
Seriously.
Good time to be alive. Good for them. Hey guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge, huge help. Thank you. Do you... Going over the whole Middle East, though, maybe we should go back to Jordan for a sec, just because I said I'd put a pin in that. You and I have talked about this before, but like the Jordanian king, who I actually kind of like. He's a very interesting guy.
Yeah, he's the right leader for that country.
When you look at his foreign policy predictions over the last 25 years, I mean, people should just listen to that guy. Like, he's almost never wrong.
Oh, I would go so far as to say of everybody in the region or everybody who studies the region, no one knows as much as King Abdullah.
I think you have a good argument there. I mean, it's a guy who never wanted the job. He's been Western educated as well. He's
never expected to get the job.
Never expected to get it. His dad was dying and said, it's going to be you, not the other son. He was like, what?
No, it was the king's brother that was the crown prince. And I
thought he was getting skipped over and it was going to be the oldest son that was going to get it. And then he said, no, I'm going to give it to the second son.
No, he's the oldest.
He is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the brother got a little too big for his britches. King Hussein had cancer, and his death was a slow one, and he was universally loved. My wife cried when he died. We were stationed in Athens at the time. I was
second wife?
My first wife.
First wife.
Yeah. He was universally loved. And his death was a slow one. And so as he was approaching death, the crown prince decided, I'm going to start making some preliminary changes. I'm going to make this change and that change. I'm going to restaff the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And King Hussein's like, whoa, I'm not even dead yet. We're not going to do this. You're fired. My son, Abdullah, is going to be the crown prince. And Abdullah's like, what?
Yeah.
I never wanted to be crown prince.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, he's crown prince. And then his dad dies a couple months later.
Yeah. Now, I've talked about this before with you, but he was asked at some conference in the weeks after October 7th, 2023. Among many questions, he was being obviously asked about the conflict that was going on and what this looked like and all that. But then he, of course, was asked, will you accept Palestinian refugees? And he said, I'm glad you asked that question, and I will not. Not because I don't want them, not because I don't like them. My wife is Palestinian. That's not the issue here. If I do accept them, though, I will give Israel exactly what they want. They will be able to ethnically cleanse the whole area. They'll go to countries like mine.
There it is.
And the problem will be taken care of. Mm-hmm. And I then fast forwarded and saw a press conference with him and Trump in the Oval Office when Trump got back in here, where Trump's talking about sending some Palestinians in there. And you just see the king sitting there like, God damn it.
Yep. Not going to happen. It's just not. And, you know, if Donald Trump's idea to develop Gaza and make it better than Monte Carlo, which is what he said, go with God. The Palestinians could use the influx of cash. Sure. Make it better than Monte Carlo. I think that would be a wonderful thing.
I don't think he has them in mind running it, though.
No, he doesn't. No, he never did.
He never did. And that's like, you know, that's the thing. You talk about it as the obvious point that, like, you got to be able to give people a state. There has been so much hatred built up on both sides over all these years since, you know, Israel began to exist and all that, that the unfortunate reality to me is that if you were actually, as a world, going to commit to a two-state solution, you would need to accept the fact that you're going to have what's called the bloody generation, which means, all right, let's say tomorrow I put in a two-state solution. For the next 20 to 25 years, I'm going to have all the young blood of people who grew up hating each other, wanting to kill each other, and completely disagreeing with this solution. And every time there's some sort of attack from one side or the other, instead of being like, well, nope, can't do a two-state solution, war, someone attack the other one, and that's it. You have to be able to say, no, we're going to keep the two-state solution, and it's not going to be war, which goes against every law of human nature.
Somebody's going to have to guarantee it. They'll have to guarantee peace.
How possible? Is that even remotely possible?
It's possible, I suppose. I mean, pretty much anything can be negotiated if the two sides are serious enough about it. Well, let me give you an example of why I think what you said just now can be overcome. I was having lunch one day with a Greek diplomat at this outdoor cafe in DC, and some guy comes up and he says, "Hey, you know, Aphrodite or whatever her name. I think her name was Aphrodite. How are you?" She gets up. "Oh, Uzgun. How are you?" And I was like, "Uzgun? That's a Turkish name." And she gets up and kisses this guy on both cheeks. And he introduces himself. I say hi, shake his hand. And he walks away. And I asked her, "What the fuck was that all about? You kiss a Turk?" And she said, "Only you Greek Americans have that position on the Turks. We have to live with them. And after all these centuries of fighting, we just decided it's better to be nice."
Interesting.
And I've noticed that. I mean, leader to leader, sure, there are problems, right? Or intelligence service to intelligence service, even military to military sometimes. But on the people to people level, they really don't have any problems.
That's interesting. Some of my buddies in Greece, though, I'm thinking about this. They all did serve in the military, though.
Yeah, mine too. In fact, I took my son to Greece in January. We're at my cousin's house. We're from the island of Rhodes, which is considered a border island because, I mean, you can hear the Turks playing their music at night. That's how close it is. And we're in a house, my cousin Chris's house, that's been in my family for 175 years. So he's the recipient of the house. So we're sitting in there, and I kind of looked past him, and I said, Chris, is that a machine gun? And he said, yeah. I said, why do you have a machine gun? How do you have a machine gun? And he says, John, I'm former special forces. You see how close these Turks are to us? They could swim here by the time I get to the gun. He said, we have to protect ourselves somehow. That is one thing. Mm-hmm. So that aside, on the mainland, they don't really care so much. Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good.
It's good.
That's a long way of saying the Palestinians and the Israelis can get there someday. And, people say all the time, too, that there can't be an independent Palestine. It's just never going to happen. I went to school with this kid, Remus Pescurius. I still remember his name. Shout out to Remus Pescurius.
What a name.
Yeah, he's Lithuanian. And we went to GW together, and he was a militant Lithuanian. He used to say, someday Lithuania will be free. And we were like, dude, you have to get past this free Lithuania thing. The Soviets are never going to allow Lithuania to be free. And 6 years later, there's a free Lithuania. Mm-hmm. So you never know. When an issue is ripe, there's nothing you can do to stop it.
I like your optimism. I hope that's the case. I think in this particular situation, because you also have religion in the middle of it.
See, this is a very important beef that I have. I hope you'll let me vent for a minute.
Oh, you can do whatever you want, John.
One of the biggest problems that we have in this entire Israel-Palestine situation is the problem of Christian Zionists, most of whom are American evangelical Christians. Palestine used to be 10% Christian. It's now more like 2 or 3% Christian. And most of those Christians have moved to the United States. Well, evangelical support for the Israeli government has resulted in an ethnic cleansing and the destruction of Christian communities in historic Palestine. So what side are you on? Are you trying to save Christianity, or are you trying to destroy Christianity, because you're destroying it right now? And listen, and I'm going to take a lot of shit in your comment section for saying this, but listen, if your religion was created in somebody's basement in the 1800s, I don't want to hear your position on Israel and Palestine. I don't find it valid.
Yeah, I think that there's been people overlooking things, and I think that the saddest part of this whole struggle is that in society we seem to have an inability to separate people from their governments, just at the simplest level. I mean, you've spelled it out before. You're like, Netanyahu's government wins with fucking 27% of the vote. It's all the Orthodox Jews over there.
Yeah, exactly.
There was a borderline. They were very close to civil war in the summer before October 7th, which is quite interesting timing, by the way, where Netanyahu seized control of the judiciary.
5 weeks before. They were people were in the streets. Yep. We were seeing demonstrations, especially in Tel Aviv and Haifa, that were unprecedented in scale. He was this close to being overthrown and having to call new elections.
That's the thing, John. It's like on every angle of this, we've sacrificed humanity, right? We've watched thousands of people be killed. And we fight about it over tweets. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
I'm guilty. I mean, I don't fight a lot on Twitter, but I'm watching these tweets too, so I'm guilty of it just like everyone else. And we also generalize all the people involved. And these are this is such a nuanced situation when it comes to the people involved and who it is. And you've now seen, I have so many Jewish friends in America who don't fuck with what Israel's doing at all. And yet they get dragged into this because it's
that's true. It leads to anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
I was having lunch in New York. I'm going to say the weather was nice. So it must have been May or June, sitting with a buddy of mine at an outside cafe. And he happens to be Jewish. He's not Zionist or fist in the air. He just happens to be Jewish. So we're talking about this, about October 7th and the war, about Israel's response to October 7th. And he said, as a Jew, I really fear that Israel's heavy hand is going to result in increases in anti-Semitism, especially in the United States. Well, there were these two women sitting next to us, both in their 80s, they told us later. And one of them finally said, "Excuse me, but I couldn't help but to overhear your conversation." The one said, "We're both Jewish too, and we have the same fears." Yeah. We are seeing an increase in anti-Semitism, especially in New York, but it's because of the Israeli government's actions. Otherwise, most people wouldn't pay any attention to what's going on in Israel.
Wouldn't care. And that's,
it wouldn't register with them.
That's what's so, like, sometimes it feels like society is just being manipulated to break at all times. I've for a long time had this quote. I'm sure someone else came up with it at some point. I've just never cared to Google it, but you know, at least it sounded smart the first time I said it. A divided society is a compliant society. And when you can divide people on one or two really emotional issues, you know, 4 or 5 years ago it was COVID and the fucking vaccine, and now it's Israel-Palestine, you can distract from everything else that you don't want them to know about or you don't want them to focus on. And it's like, you know, I talk with people who are very hardcore Zionists and I talk to people who are very hardcore anti-Zionist. And the commonalities I see in those conversations is that they will each make a separate point that is like, yes, agree 100%. But they're pointing at a problem that's over here. Yeah. And I'm like, yes, I agree with you. Now come back here. See how it works this way too, right here at home? And they're like, well, no, not whenever it comes to their issue, whatever it is, they're unwilling to see it there, but they'll see it everywhere else. And I'm like, guys, if we're, especially from an American perspective, this is my issue with this, you should be worried about the interests of Americans first and what's going on here first. It doesn't mean separate from the world. It doesn't mean become an isolationist, but like you should worry about what are the downstream effects here. So if China, Qatar, Iran, and Israel are all doing propaganda campaigns that involve body counts in the United States, I don't make a distinction between any of them. It's all the same thing. Why is it so hard for you Zionist and you anti-Zionist to see, you only see these three and you only see that one? It's the same shit.
It's the same thing. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You know, one of the things too that has been a surprise for me, even if it shouldn't be a surprise, is the difficulty that Americans have in even listening to people with whom they disagree. Yeah. Growing up, just like on my dad's side, as an example, when my dad's parents came to the United States, my grandmother was a royalist, right? She supported the Greek royal family, which wasn't Greek, it was Danish, and the king couldn't even speak Greek, so he was overthrown, which he deserved to be. Oh, malakas. So my grandfather was a Republican with a small r. He supported the establishment of the Hellenic Republic, and that's what the Greeks have now. Politically, they both somehow became Democrats. On my mom's side, my grandparents didn't give two shits about politics in Greece, and they became Republicans, and most of their kids were Republicans. My mom was a Democrat, but my uncles voted for Wallace in '68 very, very happily. And I remember and I won't even say it because it's a tough vote. Yeah, it involves some not very nice words. But they voted for Wallace, my two uncles, and then I still remember being a little kid and seeing the Nixon Now buttons that they had on. So it just never occurred to me that there were people out there who wouldn't speak to other people just because they believe in one thing or don't believe in another. My best friends from high school, best friends. I mean, we're all in each other's weddings. We're godfathers to each other's kids. Dave McCracken, Dave's passed away, but Dave was a Republican, Gary Senko, Republican, Guy Cabellis, a Democrat, and Russ Collette, a Democrat. And it never mattered to any of us. And I just don't, people say all the time, I can't believe you would go on Fox News. Why wouldn't I go on Fox News? I have a position on an issue like John Brennan. It happens to fit in with Fox News's editorial position. But maybe I can educate a Fox News viewer
Sure.
if I go on tonight and I have my 20 seconds to speak my piece.
Yeah, I think it's very deliberate from whoever
they don't want us to talk to one another.
They don't want us to do it.
Like, for example, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I'm
please.
fascinated by this fissure that we're seeing right now among conservatives about Tucker Carlson's decision to interview Nick Fuentes. Okay. Why wouldn't you interview Nick Fuentes? If you think he's a turd with repulsive positions, then expose him as a turd with repulsive positions. Don't say, oh my God, I can never talk to him. No, writing him off, can't talk to him. Talk to him and let him destroy himself with his repulsive positions. But this idea now, well, they have to cut off Tucker. He's no good anymore. And, the head of the Heritage Foundation said something nice about him, so now he has to resign. It's like, what's wrong with you people?
Yeah, I think that part's crazy. I
do.
I would love to get your thoughts on this, though, because I look at this whole Tucker situation. It's very fascinating to me watching it happen, because I think you're seeing a lot of laws of human nature play out. And what I mean by that is Tucker raised some points a year and a half ago, whatever, that were valid points.
Yes.
Apolitical in a lot of ways. We're talking foreign policy, things going on in the Middle East, asking very valid questions.
And he's very well informed.
He is well informed. Yeah. And he got viciously attacked by people for it who sought to destroy him and silence him. And one thing about Tucker is he's an emotional guy, takes one to know one, and so he reacts to those things. And he fights fire with fire. And then the fire gets bigger, and the fire gets bigger, and the fire gets bigger. And pretty soon, you end up saying things just to set each other off. And I think we've gone far past that point. I thought the attacks on him, calling him anti-Semitic, were fucking
He's
ridiculous.
Not anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
See, but this is the thing. This is where that propaganda that you talked about a few minutes ago enters in. It is that many Americans have been convinced that if you are anti-Netanyahu, or if you are opposed to the present policies of the current Israeli government, you are anti-Semitic. In fact, an Israeli friend of mine, a close Israeli friend of mine who served in the IDF and everything, told me that they're actually taught to do that at school, that any criticism of Israel, they're supposed to label as anti-Semitic so that people back off, and people generally do back off.
So I can criticize any government around the world, even China now. Remember when that was a thing? You were racist if you criticized China. Now they love you criticizing China.
That's right.
But like, you can criticize any country around the world, and it's not racist when you criticize their government. But when you criticize this one, it's racist.
Yes.
That's wrong. And, here's the thing about Tucker and Fuentes, because I'm a free speech absolutist, right? And I think everyone should be allowed to talk. I think Nick Fuentes, I wildly disagree with who he is as a person, everything.
But he's got a right to say whatever he wants to say.
Free speech. He has a right to say what he wants to say.
100% agree.
The question here, John, is if people just look at it on just this situation, don't look at the whole build up to it, which is absolutely relevant, but just look at it in this situation with Tucker. People are looking at Tucker going, why are you using your platform to talk to a guy like that? And I want to be careful how I say this as someone who has a platform and talks to people from all ends of the spectrum. I think that when you do something like that, when you're Tucker Carlson, you are doing it and giving your enemies exactly what they want.
Yeah, I can see that. But on the other hand, too, look at it this way. He does how many of these a week? 1, 2, 3. I don't even know.
A lot, I'm sure.
A lot. This is just another one in a long line of guests. He's going to have somebody on that's going to be the exact opposite. He's going to have on the nun from Jerusalem, George Stephanopoulos' sister.
Is that actually a sister?
I actually Googled it, and it said that she is. I don't know. I don't see any kind of family resemblance. And funny little small world tidbit. Yeah. George Stephanopoulos' grandfather was my parish priest when I was a little kid, and he baptized me. And I remember George from Sunday school. He was a year or two older than I was.
No shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Small world.
Small world, yeah. But, and actually his dad married my brother and his first wife.
Wow.
Yeah. He was a priest here at the Holy Trinity Cathedral in New York.
Oh, you Greeks.
We all stick together.
Parea.
Yeah, we're all parea. We all enjoy each other's company. So anyway, for me personally, I wouldn't have invited Nick Fuentes just because I don't think I would have much to say to somebody like Nick Fuentes. But Tucker feels liberated since he left Fox News. Mm-hmm. He feels unencumbered by corporate structures and policies. And he just decided that he was going to have on anybody who he thought would give him 2 or 3 hours of interesting conversation.
Yeah. And I also, because I'm also not a believer in bringing someone in there just to stick them through the ringer and, be CBS News, right?
Agreed.
Which is why I wouldn't talk with
Except
Nick.
for Ted Cruz.
That was pretty funny.
That was funny.
That was kind of funny. APAC Ted.
Yeah, APAC Ted.
By the way, trivia question. Who did Alan Dershowitz say was the most talented law student he ever had?
Oh, it has to be Ted.
Yeah. I always thought that was interesting.
So many people believed that Ted was destined for the Supreme Court, not for Capitol Hill. He was a real thinker at Harvard Law School.
Oh, listen, for as much as he got body bagged and thrown down the fucking river, see the river Styx by Tucker Carlson right there? Like, he's a very smart guy.
Very smart.
Very smart guy.
He was wrong on those issues, which is why Tucker beat him about the head and face.
It was funny.
Who I'd like to see next is Lindsey Graham.
Oh, it will never happen.
We'll see if he even survives this primary.
Yeah, I hope not. I don't know how that guy's ever survived any elections.
My God. From that state?
But, like, maybe people wanted to see, and I haven't watched the Tucker Fuentes sit down yet, so I really can't comment on it. So I don't want to.
It was a normal Tucker interview. It was a normal conversation. And Tucker freely disagreed with a lot of what he had to say.
All right.
But let him speak.
Let him speak. The thing that I think about here, because of how hot button the issue is and how much there is pieces of information that can be used to label going on. Like, let's look at who you might look at as people that are cringe and annoying, which might be like the hardest core Zionists who anything that they don't like is labeled anti-Semitic, which is a woke tactic.
It is.
For them to use. If I were those people, what would I want Tucker Carlson to do?
I would want him to interview Nick Fuentes.
Because now all I got to do is post that screenshot of that, regardless of context, regardless of intention,
You're
regardless
absolutely
of
right.
what it is. And it's like, I read this thing recently. I was talking about it with Mike Ritlin, but I recently read that at the height of the Roman Empire's power, when the generals would be at war in the midst of battle, and the night before or the morning of a battle, they'd be gathered in their tent, the 3 to 5 highest ranking generals, to make a decision. They would have this exercise where they would ask themselves, if we were our worst enemy right now, meaning the guys across the battlefield who are going to fight us, if we were our worst enemy right now, what decision would we want us to make?
That's brilliant. Yeah.
And they would think of it. It would always land on like the most emotional, fuck you, eye for an eye type decision. They'd be like, okay, let's do the opposite of that. And they won again and again and again and again. And it is so easy now to get angry at people. It's human nature to get angry at people who attack you incessantly with lies and propaganda and bullshit. You want to punch these people. I'm from New Jersey. Trust me. Like, I would not deal with it well.
Yeah.
But you gotta like go into a room, scream into a pillow and think, what am I going to do with this so that I can rise above it? Do I want to be more Malcolm X or do I want to be more Martin Luther King? All due respect to Malcolm X, obviously had certain stances and whatever, very interesting guy in history. The more effective one was Martin Luther King, and he deserves all the credit in the world for that because he rose above stuff in the hardest way as well. And it's like, I get it. Everyone has a right to speak. I'm not saying don't go speak with Nick Fuentes or something like that. But when you do that, you have now opened yourself up to a whole new round of attacks that could have appeared credibility.
I agree. The reason why I wouldn't have had Nick Fuentes. Well, it's severalfold. And, a part of this is obviously my own bias. I see him as just some kid. He's just some loudmouth kid.
Mm.
And many of his positions have been definitively debunked by historians over the years. I mean, there are still people alive who liberated Dachau, for example, or Bergen-Belsen or whatever. And I just don't see how it's possible that his base of support grows from what it is. And what it is a bunch of angry white guys in their 20s. So I just don't see what good it would do me to interview somebody like him. That's why I wouldn't do it.
If you look at it objectively, just like 30,000 foot view of why he's risen or whatever it is, obviously he is a very good speaker. He is. He's
very bright.
He's very bright for sure.
Mm-hmm.
He has a sense of humor as well. Mm-hmm. He can talk to the camera for hours
disarming,
at a time.
Actually.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's the first time I ever saw him at any length in an interview, and I was like, oh, he's actually a likable guy at first glance.
At first glance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's ways, like, if you wanted to look at it like, oh, the wolf coming in the hen house or something, that's how it happens when you have those other talents. But when society gets to a point, this is just my macro theory on it, but you look at a middle class that has been legislated away economically like that in a graph since the beginning of the 1980s.
That's right.
And you see chaos and chaos and chaos and chaos and chaos and lack of hope. And people who are upset about their lives, they're carrying around college debt because they were sold a system when they were 15 and had no fucking idea what it meant. Mm-hmm. You turn that emotion in somewhere and you turn it in to point it at the fingers of the elite people, regardless of where they stand, that you don't like. And when you have someone like Nick Fuentes, who regardless of how he does it or what he says, speaks to that kind of crowd and does it very effectively, that is how you get something like that to happen. And also this needs to be said because we've seen this on every side of all these issues, whether you're pro or anti, pick your favorite issue here. There are massive propaganda bot campaigns supporting both sides.
You're absolutely right. Yes, which is also dangerous and completely unregulated.
What do we do about that?
I don't know. Can you do anything about it? Like you can pass a law saying, no more bots, and the Chinese are going to laugh and laugh. The Russians, I don't know if there's anything you can do.
I remember Elon was like looking at that when he was trying to buy Twitter. They were estimating.
I remember. Right? Yeah, he said it was like 40% of Twitter users were actually bots or something like that.
I think it was like 60%.
Was it?
We
could
check it. It was a high percentage, and I haven't heard him talk about it a ton.
No,
but it's like I'm always clicking that on Twitter. That's the one where, because like that's always just been my little private platform that no one.
I used to get most of my news from Twitter.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting, but like when you just look at the following, I'll click someone and I'll just be like, huh. November 2025. Oh my God.
Up to 64%.
Yep, Deep's got it. Up to 64% of the accounts were bots. So it's like you also have massive, and I see it on both sides of the issue. You will see Ayal Jacoby tweet something out, pro-Zionist, and it's got fucking 10,000 likes in 10 minutes. You will see Ian Carroll tweet out something. Ian's been on my show. Ian will tweet out something and has 10,000 likes in 10 minutes. Neither of these make sense.
Crazy.
Sorry.
No.
It doesn't make any sense.
No, that doesn't make sense.
Right? And by the way, that's neither of their fault, which everyone likes to try to say like, oh, you can prove that they're like running. They don't know.
No.
I don't know these fucking accounts that touch my
I don't even
account.
manage my own Twitter account. I have a guy that does it for me. He called me last week. He said, hey, you crossed 100,000 subscribers. I said, hey, great.
Is that Simon?
Okay. Yeah, Simon.
Simon doing that. Damn it. So it's always Simon tweeting. I knew that already. But still, that's kind of funny. It's just.
And Simon sends his best regards. He called me in the car.
Oh, he did? He's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
I like Simon. But like, to your point, bringing up like the whole thing, we now make content like, the NFL playoffs or something.
Yeah.
And like so-and-so talk to so-and-so. And yeah, I fall in the trap too sometimes.
Oh, man. When I was in prison, people used to get this magazine like Hip Hop Weekly or something like, I think that's what it was called. And I mean, it's clearly just a made up tabloid, you know, with these fake feuds, and somebody was in the club and they threw money in the face of somebody else because of something that happened in Atlanta. I got kind of a kick out of it, but these articles sometimes led to bloodshed. I remember two guys beating each other to the death over who had more money, Kanye or Jay-Z. It's like, seriously, you guys are going to go to solitary for that. There are no better reasons to go to solitary. That's what you chose. Oh my God.
I mean, there's not a lot to do in prison.
No.
I'll give them that.
I saw a fist fight once over whether they should watch Love and Hip Hop Atlanta or 110th and Park or whatever the show was called. 120th and Park.
Did you have to make your bones in a fist fight?
No.
Haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.